friends, John LaRuffa here with another rules speed through, and today we're going to look at the entirety of the Everdell collection. How do you play this game? How do you play it solo? Not just the base game, but also we're going to look at Spirecrest, which is one of the newer expansions, Bellfaire, which is one of the newer expansions, and one of the older ones, Pearlbrook. So we're going to take a look at all these, and maybe you only have one or two, or maybe you just have the base game. I'm going to do it in order so that you can stop the video whenever you want once you're done learning what you need. But if you have all of them and you want to learn how to play all of them solo together, you're in for a treat. So let's get going. Okay, so when you've started the base game, the setup should look something like this. You should have the board put out in front of you, the resources spread out, the initial starting reward tiles here for these events, and then you have a couple of different specific tasks that you're going to be trying to do throughout the game. Over here, you've got your seasons on the top and this tree, and then you have a deck of cards that you can either put down there under the tree or just stab them off to the side if you like me, because it's hard to reach. You start it with the hand size of 5 cards. You begin there, 2 workers, and then 2 workers for our solo opponent. And the solo opponent is going to place those 2 workers first, one right on this space right here, blocking the space off, taking it for the rest of the game, taking it out, and then the other one on the space right here. So that's where it's going to begin. Now in this game, the solo AI is Rugwort the Rascal, and he's actually fairly easy to deal with because he just does things in reaction to what you do, as well as blocking cards and spaces. So in the first round, he will block this space and this space. They'll be unavailable to you. And in subsequent rounds, he will do other things, which I'll show you in just a second. Also, he will start to block buildings from you to be able to take them from the field, and that'll be only up to him to buy. And then he also builds cards. So every time you build a card, he's going to build a card as well. So we'll talk about that in just a second. So this is a worker placement game, and basically what you have is you start with 2 workers, and in order to take actions, you're going to place those workers on spots that have these little footprints. If the footprint is a circle like this, it means that only 1 worker can go there, and that's it. And then some of them have these little 4s in here, and that has to do with a 4-player game. Doesn't matter for us. We're just playing a solo game against the Rugwort opponent. If the spot over here has this open spot, in a multiplayer game, any number of people could go there, okay? So that's a little bit of a different spot, but again, in this game, it doesn't matter for us. So basically, whenever you put your worker out in a spot like this, you would go ahead and place your worker there and then take the resources. So you've got resin here, you've got wood or twigs, you've got pebbles, and then you've got berries, and those are used in a variety of ways in the games, mostly to build cards. So how do I build a card? Most of the time I have to build a card from my hand. It does not require an action, but it does take a turn. And what I have to do is play the card in my face-up tableau. All right, and when I play it, I have to pay whatever it says over here, okay? So in order to play the farm, I have to pay 2 berries, okay? And in this case, I apologize, this isn't the farm. In order to play the wife, I have to pay 2 berries. This card pairs with the farm. So what's nice about this game is there's a lot of different cards that pair with things, and if you have that in your tableau already, you can play this card for free if you, for instance, have the twig barge. So I'll give you an example of that right here. The twig barge is over here in the main area. If somehow you were able to get the resources for this. By the way, you can play cards. I should say this. You can play cards from your hand to build them. You can also build from the field. You just cannot take cards from the field into your hand. So this is kind of an open space. Okay, so if I wanted to build this card, I could build it by paying 1 pebble and 1 twig, put it into my tableau, and that would be my turn. Now, I told you that the solo opponent, whenever you build a card, he will also build a card. So what's going to happen is you're going to refill that spot. Then you're going to roll the dice that came with the game. And in this case, it says 7. You're going to build this card without paying any resources, without doing anything in the card. You're just basically going to set it aside. And he's going to score that card at the end of the game. So I like to make a couple of different piles, but you don't have to. You can just make a pile of 1 cards, and then that'll show you how many he's got. But every time you play a card, he's going to play a card. And that is going to be one of the main ways that he scores and kind of interacts with your plans. And once he does that, you again refill. Okay, so back to my example here. I have built the twig barge. All right, on my next turn, I can build or play the barge toad for free. He was in my hand, I can play him for free. If he was out here, I could still play him for free, because you'll notice he is one of the, he is the accompanying creature that goes with, or critter, pardon me, that goes with this common construction. So if you see this, you can play this guy for free. He will also go in your tableau, and you won't have to pay the 2 berries, all right, because it's included. If you already have built the twig barge, you can get this. Once you do that, however, you have to mark that you've used it, because you can only do that once per location, and then you're going to go ahead and put one of these little closed door symbols there. So that means that the twig barge could not build another barge toad, etc., etc. And so that's the main way you're going to be playing cards in your tableau. Now in your tableau or city, you can have a maximum of 15 cards. So basically the rule book suggests you kind of lay them out in a matrix like that. That would help you remember that you have 15 cards. And then when you've played those, you can't build any more. You can't exceed that. The one thing that you can do is there are some cards that allow you to get rid of cards so that you can kind of swap out, but that's a special ability, okay? The other thing is that you know, our friend over here won't build any more cards than you do, because every time you build a card, he will build a card as well. So those are the basics of the types of things that you're going to do in this game. You're going to build cards from the field or your hand. You're going to go ahead and pay the resources, build them. Each of these cards is going to have something special on them, which I'll talk about how that works in just a second. And then you're going to use your workers to play out here to get different things. There's also cards that have spots. When you build them, you can use a worker there, or a critter, pardon me. I'm sorry, it is a worker. The critters are different. And each of these cards, the interesting thing about this game and the complexity comes from the fact that each of these cards is highly comboable, so to speak, with other cards. This game is all about card combinations. That's how you're going to do well. If you're thinking about card combinations, you're going to score a lot of points. If you're not, if you're just playing cards willy-nilly, you're going to do kind of poorly. And so it does take a couple of times when you play this game to kind of figure that out. A couple more things I want to talk about with regards to card anatomy. So you notice that this says open over here. And in a multiplayer game, you're going to want to look what that means. But basically, it means that another player can put their worker on your spot. You will get 1 point, okay, as compensation, but they will block that card from you. Additionally, some of the cards are worth points. This one's worth 2 points at the end of the game. And then each of the cards has a different type. So these cards over here are your production cards and will activate at the end of the season. And then you've got other types here that correspond to different things in the game. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, here we go. Here's one like this. And all of those correspond to different things. Most importantly, they correspond to these events. So in order to score or place your guy on these events, a worker, you have to have already previously built that number and that type of cards to be able to place it there and claim it for the end. Okay, and the same thing a little bit differently over here. Some of these cards allow you to do that, and some of them in these events require that you've played specific cards. So for instance, this card right here, under new management, you have had to already play the peddler and the general store to be able to place your worker and to obtain that card. When you obtain the card, you do what it says on the bottom of there, and then that's it. Some of them give you points. And depending, see, this is actually from the expansion. You'll notice that little black symbol over there on the side, that's from the expansion. So you're going to get a lot of different cards in the base game, but some of these that I'm showing you might come from one of the expansions. Okay, and so that's basically the flow of the game. Now, as far as what you do in your turn. Now, as far as how the game goes, after you've spent both of your workers, and after you've finished taking all your actions that you want to take, you're going to pass. And when you pass, the solo player will also pass as well. To pass, it's basically called ending the season or preparing for a season. And so what you're going to do up here is you're going to go look at the top of the tree, and in spring, you're going to take your particular worker of your color right here, and then you are going to activate any production buildings that you had previously built and do whatever it says. when you build a production building in the first place, I forgot to mention this, you will take that action right away. But then these buildings will happen again in the preparing for the season spots for spring and also when you get to autumn. All right, and then if you were to do the summer preparing after the second round, you're going to draw 2 cards from the meadow. I said the field earlier, but it's really called the meadow. And also get your worker, and then in the end, you're going to do the production phase again and get 2 more workers. So this game, you can have any number of actions that you want before you pass. Once you do pass, you're done, and then you pass by doing the prepare for season action. And that's kind of how it wraps up. Now, from a solo standpoint, 2 things are going to happen after they prepare for the season. Number 1, they are going to take their worker, and they're going to put their worker right here, and that means that is going to be a card that's claimed in the meadow for them, and you are no longer able to build this card. It is theirs and only theirs. They can build it again when they roll this. If it happens to come up with a 1, not an 8, they will go ahead and build that card, and then just replace it, but it basically blocks you from these cards as you go forward. Additionally, this guy is going to come over here and block this space, okay? And then also, this guy is going to come over here and block the 2 resin space. And then you're going to play another round. All right. Same thing. It's going to go through another round. Then you're going to prepare for the season, do the summer. Another round, prepare for the season, do autumn. And while that happens, you're going every time you take another prepare for season, your opponent is going to put another guy on each of these spots, blocking them, continuing to move this around over here, and continuing to block these spaces that have the single-use space, basically. If you have a hard time remembering that, just remember it's the single-use space that he always blocks, and then he always goes clockwise around the different cards on the outside. At the very end of the game, you are going to put depending on which skill level you're playing with, and I'm only explaining one of the skill levels because you can read in the rule book the other ones, but you're basically going to put the opponent player here using this spot. And there's another action that you can play at the very end of the game where basically you can journey, only open the autumn, as you can see right here. You must discard cards equal to the number of points you want, so at the very end it's a way to maybe flush out 5 cards from your hand to put a worker there and get 5 points. Also, one of the things I didn't describe is this spot, which you can use at any time in the game. You may discard any number of cards from your hand. For every 2 you discard, you get a resource. So this is the wild icon for a resource, which is very helpful because sometimes you're 1 or 2 resources short, and that's a good way to get it. Finally, I should mention that when you do claim one of these areas, you will take this tile, put it in front of you, okay? And that is going to be yours for the rest of the game, and it just scores you the points at the end. Now, finally, when it comes to how the solo player scores, I recommend you just read this paragraph in here. But basically what you're going to get is he's going to get 2 points per card, and then he's going to get 3 points for every purple prosperity card that he has. So the purple prosperity ones look like this. So that's a little bit different. He's also going to score 3 points for each basic event he achieved, 3 points for each special event that you did not achieve, 3 points for his journey worker on the journey spot, and any other points, tokens that you may have given him throughout the game because of different card interactions. So the events he achieves when, I should mention this, when he qualifies for these types of things during the game, let's say he gets his 3rd cartographer card, he's going to automatically go ahead and achieve that event. So that's going to happen when he prepares for a season. It's basically a way for him to get those events if you don't take them beforehand. Additionally, he will get any of these that you do not get. So that can be powerful and cost you 3-point swings per card that you do not obtain throughout the game. So that's how you play the basic game of this versus the solo player. Now I'm going to add in the Everdell portion of it, the Pearlbrook portion of it, to show you that part of the game and see what it adds. All right, now that we have the Pearlbrook expansion added to the game, let me point out a couple of things. First of all, I think my copy may have been a deluxe copy to contain some of these little tokens. I can't remember for sure. Or the collector's edition, I think it is. That's what maybe is different. But these are just things that show which spaces are closed in the beginning of the game and which ones are open from an expansion standpoint. So What does this game add? Well, first and foremost, it adds these pearls, and these pearls allow you to get the new special event or wonder tiles. They're not really events anymore, they're wonders. So these things have become much more powerful in points and much more expensive. Okay, so how do we get pearls? Well, we have to use these frog tokens to get pearls. One of the main ways you get it is going to this space over here, this shoal space. And again, notice the difference. These are paw prints. These are frog prints. Only your frog token, which you start with one of those at the beginning of the game and only get one. You can go there to pay any 2 resources, discard 2 cards, and gain a pearl. Now, what do I do with those pearls? Again, I can spend those here to get these wonders, or I can spend them here on these cards. Now, you get 2 of these special cards at the beginning of the game, and they're going to give you something when you immediately play it, like this is gain resources equal to the cost of any of that type of card in my city. And then at the end of the game, I'm going to get 1 point for each of those cards in my city. And this one does something different. You get a whole stack of them. One of the new ways that the solo opponent will work with you in this game is if you decide to go with this, he will immediately get 5 points in tokens at the end of the game, or right at that point for the end of the game. So if you build both of these, you're giving him 10 points. So you better make sure that the payout is worth it for you. Now he is going to start the game by blocking one of these spots off, and he's going to roll the dice. You're going to look at it from a number standpoint. If it's a 1 or 2 here, 3 or 4 here, 5 or 6, 7 or 8. So we got a 1. So what's going to happen is we're going to flip this card over and reveal it. He's going to immediately take that spot, and then he's going to take 2 pearls. Okay, and those are going to be in his supply, which he's going to use in purchasing these different wonders at the end of the game, depending on how much he has. Okay, so also let's talk about what these different things are. In the beginning of the game, you're going to put in 2 citizens in 2 different locations, and these basically let you do something to also gain pearls. All right, this spot is now open. You can take it away, or you can do whatever. And the way you open these up in the game is you're not allowed to open them up unless you have that specific number of cards of that type in your city area. Once you have that, you're able to take your turn, go here. When you go there, you reveal this and you immediately get a pearl. Okay? And this one's a location. So that's one of the ways you can get pearls, is by revealing a new location. You can also immediately take the action on here. All right? And if you do, then great. You can, once it's been revealed, you can take it at any point during the game, as long as someone's not already there, like the AI, for instance. And he will reveal, basically, he will go down the list and move his spot, his token to each of those spots at the end of each season, blocking you, and if he reveals it, taking 2 pearls. If he does not, he only takes 1 pearl going there. So that's one of the other main ways that he interacts. It's different in this game. All of the other rules are the exact same. This expansion does offer, or does bring in, some different cards. So for instance, this card is one of the new ones, and you can see here it's a little different in the fact that it has a frog space. So you're going to have to use your frog space if you want to use this fairy. Okay, but all the rest of the mechanics and everything else is exactly the same. Just to point out, these are very expensive, as you can see here. You have to pay a ton of different things, discard cards, then you will get this specific monument or wonder, which will give you that many points at the end of the game. And so that's a big difference from a standpoint of scoring. Makes these pearls and this whole thing really important from a standpoint of how you're going to actually focus your strategy. So the scoring, I said, again, is identical in the original game from a standpoint of the cards. But additionally, after you pass, he is going to spend every pearl that he has to build all of these wonders, starting with the most expensive. So this is really tough. And when it comes to beating the solo player in this game, you really need to plan to get a decent amount of these out here if you can, because otherwise it's a point swing in his direction. He'll also gain points just like he did from the base game and everything else. So that's all the same. I'm not going to explain that. He will also, for any leftover pearls that he has, he will get points as well, basically for anything that he didn't spend, he'll get 2 additional points for each pearl that's left over, and then any of the points that he got throughout the game, depending on everything else. And so that's what the Pearlbrook expansion adds. I think it definitely fills out the game and adds a lot more challenge and depth to what you're doing, but it also really focuses the strategy on making sure that you get these. So if you add it, that's what's going to happen to your gameplay. All right, now I'm going to talk about the Bellfaire expansion in the next section and show you what that adds. Okay, so once you've added the Bellfaire expansion, the first thing you'll notice is that you don't need the tree anymore. You don't have to even set this thing up. I just set it aside here. The tree spaces are replaced and duplicated right up here with the exact same things. And also your special events will just be displayed over here in a line. But it adds different things. So first of all, this space now adds an end game goal. So at the end of the game, the person who has the most of those type of cards built will get 6 points, and the second most will be 3. And they give you a nice stack of different things right there. Also, they add this market space, which is really nice. What happens here is when you go here first, you're only allowed to place 1 worker there per player. And then here you will take this, like basically this load of goods. And then you'll move it over here. And then on a later turn, you can spend that. And when you do, you'll get 3 points and 2 random goods of your choice. So basically you take it first, you move it down, and then in a later turn, you can then pay it back in to get points and other things. So I think that was really kind of a cool spot right there. These work exactly the same. They also added a different one called the flower event. In the flower event, basically, once you build once of each type of the cards, you can go there, play it, and take that for 4 points. I still left out the Pearlbrook stuff because, again, this is an additive video, so all that stuff remains. Additionally, they give you these little boards. There's nothing really functional here. They're just more aesthetics. You can kind of store your different goods over here if you want and put your city down here as it splays out. But the main thing I think that this expansion adds, which is nice, is player powers. I always love player powers. They make it nice and asymmetrical. And in this case, since I'm playing the mice, I would go ahead and have this particular player power in play for me the entire game. Now, when you're playing against the solo opponent and you do something like this, you have to penalize yourself for that. So in that case, you do not get this first worker in the spring. He gets all of his other workers, everything else is fine, but that's the change that happens, one of them that happens from a standpoint of making this competitive. So if you wanted a much easier game, you could still get that, but they recommend that you put this into play, that you remove 1 worker. The scoring and everything else is very similar, but they do offer you some suggestions, which you can find in the back of the book, or near the back of the book, pardon me, to make it so that you get a little bit more competition from him. So you can choose any of these different things if you want to add a little more variant or flavor to the game, which is nice. And then one of the things it says is that you cannot use the rat player powers in the solo game. I don't even actually have that expansion, so I don't have to worry about that. So that's what this game, this expansion adds. And actually, because of the asymmetric part of it, it's I think it's one of it's probably my favorite expansion. And if I had to just buy one with the base game, this one seems like it's an easy include, just because it gives these things a different way to have some player interaction and some, not interaction, but differentiation, pardon me. So that's what you get with the Bellfaire expansion, and this may not be out worldwide right now at the time of this video, but hopefully you'll be able to pick it up pretty soon. I think it's really fun. All right, and so then the last thing I'm going to talk to you about is the expansion, the Spirecrest one. So let's go ahead and set that up and bring that into play as well. All right, so at this point now we added this bottom board here, effectively pushing the tables, or the players, kind of off of the corners of the table, because this thing is really big. So this expansion fills up the entirety of my fairly decent size gaming table. So you can see that once you've got this thing all set up, it's going to be quite a hog. So you could put it all together and you could play it all together, which I really like. This is kind of like the full Monty right now as far as what you can do to play this game with all 4 of these expansions. Now, again, I don't have the mini expansions. There's a couple of little ones that I did not obtain, so those aren't in this video. But what does this one particularly add? First of all, it adds some opportunities to get some really interesting animals, and these animals are unique, and they come through these different decks, which I'll talk about in a second. And those things help you to get some really kind of powerful different actions. It also introduces these expedition tiles, which is a way at the very end of the game for you to score a bunch of points with leftover resources or cards or different things that you have. And it introduces weather effects. Okay, and so weather effects are punitive and basically will penalize you for doing one type of action during that round. So in the beginning of the game, you also notice that you have this little traveler token. So this is kind of, we'll travel around this area here, and then at the very end of the game go on its expedition. So we'll explain that in a second. All right, so that's the whole thing, full out, full setup, and as you can see, it's quite large. Okay, so at the beginning of the game, you're going to reveal the first type of weather, which is this one right here, and it is going to tell you something. In this case, it says, whenever you gain any resource from a forest location, gain 1 less. So the forest locations are over here in this side of things, and that is what they're talking about from a standpoint of forest locations. So this is in play throughout that first turn until we prepare for the spring. Okay, after we've taken all our actions, then what's going to happen is once we prepare for the spring, you're going to move your counter over here to the next spot, and you're going to then reveal 2 expedition tiles. So the way it's going to work is in a solo game, you are going to choose one of these, and the tile basically means at the end of the game, you're going to spend whatever's in here to get those points, and then you're going to give the other one to the opponent. So for instance, in this case, this is a pretty easy one because you spend 2 points to get 3 points, but I would rather do it differently. So I would maybe put this down here. So that would be my first expedition tile right here. And then I would give 1 to my opponent over here, who will automatically at the end of the game fulfill his expedition. Then we're going to draw these 3 cards and put them at the bottom of the table here. And these 3 cards come in as yet another action space that you can take or buy. So to purchase this one, it is absolutely free. To purchase this one, you have to spend 1 card or 1 of any resource. To purchase this one, it's 2 cards or 1 of any resource. Now, if you take the free one, you'll get it for free, but the opponent will score 3 points. If you take this one, the opponent will score 2 points. If you take this one, the opponent will score 1. So that kind of means that the cheaper you get, the more points you give him. And then these things do a variety of different things throughout the end of the game or during the game, which will add more variety and more flavor. And one of the things I mentioned were the specialized meeple tokens over here. You can get those from cards in this spot or in any of these spots. And in this case right here, these allow you to get, actually if you take this card, it will give you to take, or allow you to take the big critter. And what you can do then is use that in conjunction with one of your other workers to do something special. So for instance, this says that you may place it on one of those types of cards in your city to gain any number of goods equal to the card's base point value. So that could be really interesting. And the way you do that is you go ahead and you'll take this goat, okay, or the king rur as it will, or as it was, and you're going to put a saddle on him if you want. And once you've saddled him up, like this, you then can put one of your workers on there if you want to go through all this thematic stuff. And look, there he is. He's riding away, okay? And then you can go ahead and put it on the particular card that was referenced to do whatever. Or you can say the heck with the saddle and just put the 2 of them together, but you can't spend one without the other. So this is an optional spend for the rest of the game for you. Now, finally, at the end of the game, you'll have accumulated some of these right here. You'll have 4 of them. And well, like I said before, the opponent, the AI opponent, gets whatever you don't take. So he'll automatically have the 4, and when he has these will just count for points for him at the end. He'll just automatically get those. For you, you have got to be able to pay in order the 2 different or 3 different or 4 different things or whatever it ends up being in these spots to be able to get the points. So if you come to the end of the game, you have a card and a pebble, you can spend those to advance. If you don't have 4 cards, you're done. You can't take this expedition and get these, but not that. You basically have to go in order. So that's a little bit of a flavor there, and it can gain you some good extra end game points. From a standpoint of the solo rules for different things here, his rules are identical. He only scores for these right here, and he scores for, depending on what you took during the game, extra points in that case. He ignores all the weather effects. He takes the tiles on the map that you don't choose, like I said before. So if you choose an expedition tile, one of them, he will choose the other one. You're going to place his tokens and his workers like normal, and depending on which discovery card you play, like I said, he'll get those different end game points over here. He'll get those during the game, pardon me. So that's pretty much it. That's what this expansion adds. When it comes to the entirety of it all, they say it's pretty complex to add it all. I would agree if you put this all together at the beginning, it would be heavy, but it's easy to bring it together once you know the game. So once you played the base game once or twice, you'll be pretty good to add these other things in. From a standpoint of ease of play, it adds more choices and a little bit more complexity. But this game, I think, needed it from a standpoint of it was nice in the card combos, but it was pretty basic. From a standpoint to, how do I score points? You kind of have to do the same types of things in each game. This offers you a little bit more variety. So again, I really hope this worked out for you. I hope you enjoyed seeing all 4 of these expansions kind of added one at a time. And again, my name is John LaRuffa. This has been a rules speed through, and if you haven't, please like and subscribe to my channel, as I really appreciate it. Thank you very much, everybody. Stay safe, stay healthy.